Baldur's Gate 3, developed and published by Larian Studios and released in 2023, is wait for it, one more second, a fucking fantastic video game. It's a tactical RPG set in the Forgotten Realms, a setting most commonly used for playing Dungeons and Dragons. In the game, you will either create a character yourself or pick one of the several pre-made origin characters to set forth with and explore the Sword Coast in a quest to bring down a sordid mind flayer plot. The Forgotten Realms setting has decades of history, which make for a rich tapestry that Larian have used to great effect, and for the most part is a great introduction to the setting. This is aided by the fact that the Forgotten Realms setting has formed the basis for dozens of other intellectual properties over the years. As the number 3 implies, Baldur's Gate 3 is technically part of a series started by BioWare way back in 1998, with Baldur's Gate 2 being released in the year of our Lord 2000. While BG3 isn't a direct sequel taking place 100 years after the other two games, it does contain a lot of callbacks and acknowledgements of the previous titles. As one of the 15 people who have finished all 3 games in the series, this is well appreciated. Look, I'm going to tell you something you might not be aware of. Baldur's Gate 3 has been a huge success, breaking Steam records and has consistently stayed in the top 10 most played games on Steam months after release, which is basically unheard of for a mostly single player game. I am by nature a contrarian. I try to find faults in big popular things because clearly I am smart and everyone else are sheeple. It's funny, whenever Larian's previous game is mentioned, Divinity Original Sin 2, I knee-jerk and say, bad writing, but combat's okay. Yet when I went and checked on Steam, I had 137 hours played and had written a glowingly positive review. What I'm trying to express here is that I can have some dumbass knee-jerk opinions if not given the time to think about them, and I hope I'm not the only one guilty of this. But despite this nature, I can't bring myself to be the contrarian here. Baldur's Gate 3 is a massive, beautiful, content-rich creation that has clearly been made with pure, distilled nerd love. I thought people were being a bit hyperbolic when they claimed it's ruined other games for me, and I was right, but it also isn't that far from the truth. While there are some niggling irritations that are more than skin deep, Baldur's Gate 3 has set a new standard of what a tactical, choice matters RPG can be. The setup to BG3 is that you are a person who's been captured by mind flayers and are on board a mind flayer flying ship thing called a nautiloid. The wiki describes a nautiloid as follows. Nautiloids were bizarre flying ships employed by mind flayers to travel directly between worlds and the astral plane. If the words mind flayers, nautiloid, or astral plane don't make any sense to you, don't worry. The game does a good job of explaining these things over its course. On board the ship, we are being held in some kind of a pod when a mind flayer reaches into a pool of tadpoles, pulls one out, and proceeds to insert it into our eye socket. This is an important plot point and serves as a catalyst to this whole mess. You awaken sometime later to find the ship is under attack by demons and the thing is going down. You fight your way to the controls and try to right the ship, but it eventually crashes. Your character, among others who have been infected by this tadpole, lands on a beach dazed and confused, but with a clear goal in mind: to remove the mind flayer tadpole before you become one of the interdimensional horrors yourself. Upon exploring the beach, you will run into other infected who will be willing to join your party. This is the binding circumstance that brings the team of misfits together. While you all might have conflicting ideals and just separate lives in general, you all have the common desire to rid yourself of the Gake tadpole. There are around 6 party members available for you to find immediately after landing on the beach, and they're all pretty good. While it would have been nice to have a bit more of a selection, it is more than made up for by the depth each character has to them. You can only have 3 companions out with you at a time, so this also adds some replayability to it too. They have their own problems, agendas, and thoughts. They all have enough history and shade to them that they could be main characters of their own games, and that can be the case if you decide to play one of them as your main character. These party members also usually have different story paths you can lead them down, influencing what kind of people they'll be by journey's end. There must be thousands of different parts in the story where these party members chime in and add their 2 cents to a situation.
Will with a Y. Why?
Why? That's right.
But why?
Why? A great uncle's name, my father said. But I just figured he couldn't spell.
And will form opinions on you, the player, depending on the choices you make. To be honest, it doesn't matter if a party member likes you or not, as long as you don't do something so egregious as to make them leave. These characters are all so well written and likable though, that you'll most likely build some kind of camaraderie with them, whether you were planning to or not. This extends to the NPCs you'll meet along the way. Even on my evil character playthrough, I found it difficult to be merciless to certain characters because, well, I really liked them. While the game doesn't hold up as strongly with an evil run, it should be lauded that the quality of the characters makes it hard to murder them. There are also a few other party members that can be recruited as the game goes on and as they appear in the story. This is a clever way for Larian to sprinkle in some new party members for you to roll with, without having to add in all those aforementioned chime-ins and reactivity for earlier chapters of the game. For example, if you recruit an Act 2 companion, they will let you know that they will wait in camp if you decide to, for whatever reason, go back to an Act 1 area. While BG3 excels in dialogue and characters, the meta story is pretty meh. It's not bad, but it's very summer blockbustery kind of thing. It's difficult to articulate, but all I can say is there probably could have been some more thought put into it, kind of like this paragraph. But when you're making a game as open and reactive to player choice as this is, I'm fine in accepting the trade-off. Just don't go expecting some Planescape Disco Elysium level shit, because this game isn't for that. Those games are deeply personal, with defined main characters who, despite all your choices, are who they are. Regardless of your choices, you end up in the same place as everyone else, which contributes to them being so thoughtful. BG3 is the opposite of that. Your choices starting from the very beginning to the very end can end you up in wildly different situations. It's not as thoughtful as the other two games mentioned, but it is immensely more replayable for that reason. After beating it, I didn't really have another Disco Elysium playthrough in me. The story was the story, and I fucking loved the ride. In Baldur's Gate 3 though, I have a constant compulsion to start a new character and see how I can fuck with the story, to change things and explore with things that might have been closed off by choices made in a previous playthrough. Overall, I think this is a marvellously written game that even in its darkest moments maintains a theatrical whimsiness throughout. Baldur's Gate 3 is an absolute joy in the gameplay department, with some caveats. From what I'm told, it's a faithful recreation of tabletop Dungeons & Dragons, with well over 200 abilities that can be utilised both in combat and outside of it. When you load up the game for the first time, you will be greeted with a character creator, where you'll make your character. There are 12 classes to choose from, which will determine your abilities and role-playing opportunities out in the world. You also choose some proficiencies, such as knowledge of things in the game world like history or religion, and distribute your stats accordingly. The system is brilliant in the sense that it can be easy to learn and exciting to master. The game will set default proficiencies and stats, which you'll be then able to change, but the defaults are just fine until you have more of an idea of how to play. There is also an option called multi-classing, the act of branching out into other classes at the expense of becoming more powerful in just one area. Think a warrior who dabbles in some sorceries. This character wouldn't be able to cast the highest level spells, but would still be a formidable foe in close combat as well as ranged. I wouldn't advise doing this straight out of the gate, because it relies on you to have game knowledge to know which classes synergize best with which. A lot of the game is spent in dialogue with other characters, which is just one of the many places role-playing opportunities for your class and chosen proficiencies can arise. Say you put some points into your medicine proficiency and you come across a wounded character. You will, in most cases, be able to make a dice roll to determine whether or not you succeeded in helping said character. I won't go into too much detail, but this being a Dungeons and Dragons game means everything is a dice roll. Attacking an enemy? Dice roll. Trying to convince someone of something? Dice roll. Something suspicious in the world that can be examined. A dice is rolled to determine if your characters noticed it. There is a delicious random number generator factor to almost everything you do in Baldur's Gate, and that could be a sticking or selling point for some. I cannot overstate how much dice rolling affects how the game can possibly play out for you, but if that's a problem, then we always have our good friend, Monsieur Save Scum. If you make a mistake or get an outcome you don't like, you are just able to reload your save and give it another go. In a way, this kind of makes you your own dungeon master, allowing you to fudge the numbers as necessary. Controlling your characters is done with the mouse on PC and the analog stick on controller. This works pretty well, but it's a bit of a finicky system. Rather than dragging a box over the characters you'd like to move and then telling them where you'd like them to go, like in the previous Baldur's Gate games, BG3 has a grouping system. By default, your party will be grouped, so telling one person to go will command all of them to go. If you ungroup, you are able to more meticulously control your party members, but this is an added menu tax that feels unnecessary. On top of this, when moving as a group, party members will sometimes get stuck on terrain which won't always be immediately apparent to the player. This is a minor irritation in a major part of how you interact with the game, but at the end of the day, it means that the game plays extremely well with controller. Another trade-off where I think Larian did make the right decision. Combat in BG3 is turn-based, every turn representing a small amount of time passing. Starting out, you're allowed to make one action and one bonus action. An action is the meat here, mainly representing your ability to attack things. Bonus actions are for more smaller things, such as drinking a potion, shoving an enemy, or jumping. Once combat is initiated, the turn order is then determined by a dice roll, which is based on each combat's initiative stat. The turn order is then displayed at the top of the screen, which you then use to try and work out each move. There are lots of things to keep track of in combat, but luckily low-level combat is relatively simple. Larian have done a good job with diegetic tutorials, with encounters found in the first few hours of the game expressing different gameplay mechanics that you'll want to learn. It was a real trip when I first put an enemy to sleep, and then the next turn seeing one of his friends using a push action to wake them up. It's not perfect though, and a lot of mechanics such as stealth and ambushing are poorly explained. Each encounter feels fine-tuned, and the game is extremely lean, with not a whiff of grinding and repeat encounters. The game has several enemies that you will only see once, which is wild when they could have spread them all throughout instead of developing more enemy types. There is one encounter early on that is easily missable, and is the only place in the game you'll see a harpy. The levels in BG3 are much more vertical than contemporaries in this genre, with the best comparison being Larian's previous game, Divinity Original Sin. Positioning makes a big deal in combat. Being elevated to one's enemy will render an advantage and also work in reverse. Trying to send a projectile upwards will give a disadvantage. This means that scouting can play a role here too. Sending in a stealthy companion to check out where the enemies are positioned can lend a huge advantage if you manage to put your people in the right places. To go with this, the game world is very manipulable. Think of something like the recent Hitman games. You can throw water on someone and cast an electric spell to deal extra damage, or shoot down a chandelier to firebomb enemies. If there's a locked door and a guard in your way, you could cast a distraction spell to occupy the guard while you lockpick the door. If you set off some traps, you could cast a sanctuary spell, preventing you from taking any damage until you deal damage yourself. There are so many creative ways for you to tackle problems in this game that it may take you a while to acclimatize to just how much freedom you get here to accomplish your objectives. This is yet another factor contributing to the massive replayability factor within Baldur's Gate 3. You can almost consider your first playthrough as training to how the game wants you to play it. You're not forced to do any wild, wacky stuff to succeed, but the further through the game you get, the more opportunities you notice to break the situations in your favour. You then start to wonder what different things you could do in sections that you've already played. well, I guess make a new character and find out. Something that makes the Hitman World of Assassination trilogy so wonderful is that when you first approach a situation, it can seem impossible. How am I going to kill this person in a room full of witnesses? Well, you eventually do, and at this point you gotta make your escape. During this escape, you will end up seeing dozens of other ways you could have gotten into the building, or different vantage points for you to take out your mark. Baldur's Gate 3 is similar in this regard, having incredibly dense areas that are more vertical slice than open world. Quests are handled in a similar open way. There are always multiple different ways to complete a quest, and oftentimes if you fail to complete an objective, or just decide to take it the other way, the game will offer up a failsafe of sorts. Sometimes not. Kill an NPC because they backtalked you, or you failed a dice roll to convince them not to attack you, and they'll be gone for good, taking the quest they had with them. There is no real way to fail in Baldur's Gate other than your party dying, so while you might not get the outcome for a quest you wanted, you will usually only ever be failing forward rather than ruining your game in any way. You're going to be doing a lot of looting in your travels, and this is somewhere that if I had to take points off the game, it'd be here. There are bazillions of things on the ground, and just as many containers to open up. Most of them will be empty, some will have vendor trash, and 1 in every 100 will have something that was worth opening it for. I'm undecided how I feel about this because it can bring the pacing to its knees while you open up every barrel and vase, but at the same time, it's just another place in Baldur's Gate 3 where you're getting a dopamine high from the gambling aspect of it all. Ooh, what's in here? The inventory is also no great shakes. It is manageable and has a search bar, so hooray for that, but it can still be difficult to find exactly what you're looking for. This is more so a problem when using a controller, the support of which is excellent except for how it controls here. I think the problem is that there is a lot of chaff in the items you can pick up, so it can be hard to discern the good and the bad. Even with the useful loot, human hoovers will have huge stockpiles of potions and scrolls, so then it can be difficult to find your good items from your other good items. Ah well, that's a good problem to have, I guess. Just try to remember to use the supplies the game gives you, because there will always be another vase to loot just around the corner. So I think I've pretty well covered combat and exploration, so the final piece of this gameplay puzzle is the way that you can interact with other characters in the game world. With an NPC in front of you, there are generally 4 things you can do with them: talk, trade, attack, or steal. Dialogue in BG3 is pretty standard to the computer role-playing fare. Chat up NPCs, listen and learn from what they have to say, and maybe get a quest from them if they're important enough. What is amazing is the sheer amount of special dialogue that is contained within the game, depending on your race, class, and choices you've made. If you're a bard, you can say bard things. If you're a drow above ground, people will comment on that. If you're great at athletics, you can win an arm wrestle. If you help Joe, maybe Mary will help you down the line in return. Their opportunities for role-playing here are just so vast that I really advise at least doing the opening few hours with at least 2 different characters, just to witness the care and attention to detail that went into it. Trading is, well, trading, goods and services for currency, and stealing is, you guessed it, a dice roll. There will be a dice roll that must be passed to successfully steal. The more valuable the item, the more difficult the roll to steal it. After a few moments, the victim will most likely notice that something is missing and will try to track down the culprit. Sending your thief some ways away will usually get you off Michael scot-free, but what's even more fun is disguising yourself before or after you've committed the deed, and then removing the disguise afterwards. They won't know what hit them. At long last, the dreaded presentation section. Luckily though, this is a game that's just easy to heap praise on. From what is technically an indie game, this game looks just as good as anything else on the market. There's just so much art that got packed into this game, which is one of the many benefits of being based off an IP with so much history. The sound, graphics, and even the menus are just dripping with love and care. And there are so many different places you'll go, all with a unique visual style to them. Creature design is also top-notch and is elevated by the fact that a lot of the enemies are unique to the kinds of places you fight them in. The music is also a standout here, with heaps of earworms to get stuck in your head, and even a surprise little musical number to those who thoroughly explore Act 3. At the end of the day, Baldur's Gate 3 is an amazing game. It isn't always the most intuitive to play, and there's a shit ton of menu tax throughout, but such is the price of complexity. It's an amazing value proposition, with even a single playthrough lasting 80 to 100 hours. The thing is though, it probably won't just be a single playthrough that you do. I now have 240 hours in BG3, which has been one complete through and half a dozen characters through Act 1. There are probably a bazillion things I didn't mention in this review, and it's shaped out to be one of my longest yet. I only lightly glanced on the combat and didn't even mention the romances and the more odd party interactions. Without making this a million minutes long, I covered the things that were important to me, and I'd love to hear the things that you liked or disliked about BG3 in the comments. I'm currently doing a tactician playthrough with my Githyanki Bard boy, and will most likely do an honor mode run after that. I'll probably do another run after that. With its smash success, I don't want every game to be like Baldur's Gate 3. I still want Disco, I still want Planescape, but I'm so glad that this is the game we got. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.